My name's Gareth and I make videos helping people to get high scores in the IELTS test. In this video, we're going to be looking at a Part 2 sample answer. In fact, it's the sample answer that we were planning in the previous video. I'm sorry if you've been waiting for quite a long time for this sample answer. The planning video was a while ago, but finally we've got round to doing the answer. So what I'll do is just show you the task card that we looked at in the planning video, explain that task card just in case you've forgotten, and then we'll look at the sample answer and analyze it a little bit afterwards and think about why it would get a really high score in the IELTS speaking test. So this was the task we were looking at before. You can see it's asking you to describe a change that you would like to see in your local area, and we have the 4 cues underneath. Now, we planned the answer for this in the previous video and went through each cue one by one, coming up with a few ideas and a bit of vocabulary to use in our answer. Now, those 4 questions, if we just look through them quickly before we look at the sample answer. The first one is what the change would be. So we're describing the change that we want to see. And then the second one, who would be involved in making the change. And the third cue, how it would be done. And the final one, why you would like to see the change happen. So what we're going to do in our answer is go through those 4 cues one by one, expanding on the idea we had in the planning video. Now, if you haven't seen the planning video already, it might be useful to see that as well as watching this answer. But let's get straight on with it now, and I'll go through the answer and you can listen to me give the answer, and then afterwards I'll explain a little bit about some of the vocabulary I use and why it's a really kind of high-level answer that the examiner would be impressed by and would get probably a band 9 score. So here we go. The change that I'd like to see in my local neighbourhood is the pedestrianisation of the main shopping street in the town centre. I'd like to see traffic diverted around this area in order to make it safer and more attractive for visitors and shoppers. Most of the traffic that clogs up the main street is just passing through the town, but it's the local people who have to put up with the congestion, noise and pollution. It's the job of the local council to make changes like the one I'm suggesting. But before the council does anything, there usually needs to be some pressure from local people to bring a problem to light. So perhaps we need a campaign by local residents who want to see this change. Then the council might contract a town planner or an architect to come up with some possible designs for a new road system. I'm not sure exactly the process of creating a pedestrian street would work, but I imagine that it would require detailed planning. Perhaps a bypass would need to be built around the town centre first. This would give drivers a faster alternative to driving through the town, and it would allow the main shopping street to be blocked off and pedestrianised. I'd like to see this change because it would really improve the quality of life of residents in the town where I live. I can imagine the new pedestrian street having cafes and restaurants with outdoor seating. It would be safer and more pleasant place for families to go shopping. And I'm sure this would have a positive knock-on effect on local shops and businesses. There we go. That's the answer. You can see there it probably fits the required amount of time that the examiner gives you for part 2, which is between 1 and 2 minutes. But we fully covered everything on the task card. You don't have to do this, but it's a nice way to give your response a good structure. You can see there that basically I was giving a kind of full paragraph on each of those cues that you can see in the task card. Now, if we look in a bit more detail about how I answered each of those cues and some of the good things that I did and included when answering it. So if we look at the first paragraph where I was answering the cue what the change would be. Now really it's introducing the idea of the change, and that change was the pedestrianisation, which means making a road only available for pedestrians, so people walking down that street. And also there's some quite good idiomatic vocabulary here. You can see the phrasal verb clogs up. Most of the traffic that clogs up the main street. Now here it just means that it's blocking the main street, that there is traffic, but the traffic clogs up the street. So it's a nice idiomatic phrase that native speakers sometimes use to describe traffic. Also, the phrasal verb put up with. I've said local people who have to put up with the congestion. So put up with is to be patient with something or suffer through something. And also you can see the synonym there of traffic, congestion, just to show a wider range of vocabulary as well. So those are some interesting things in the response to the first cue. Let's move on and look at the response to the second cue. You can see here, again, we've got some quite good idiomatic vocabulary. Now, you can see I've said to bring a problem to light. This just means to make people aware of a problem, and it fits the context of the local community telling the local council or government about a problem, to bring a problem to light. Also, another phrasal verb we've got here, to come up with some possible designs. Now, come up with means to, well, have an idea or create an idea. So, to come up with. Doesn't seem that complex there, but it is idiomatic vocabulary. And remember, if we're looking at scores of band 7 to 9, we do need this type of vocabulary. Let's look at the answer now to the third cue. Now again, there was some useful phrases and vocabulary in this paragraph. We've got the phrase, a bypass would need to be built. Now, there's nothing too complex here. I mean, the word bypass, which is specific to the idea or the topic that we're talking about, roads and the pedestrianisation of roads. But also the grammar here is useful. We're using passive voice. It's really just copying the grammar from the cue, but it's showing that we're aware of this and we can use it effectively and in the right context. Also, the word pedestrianised. So here we're just changing the form of the noun pedestrianisation and using it as a verb. The shopping street to be blocked off and pedestrianised. So let's finally move on to the final cue that was answered and look at some useful vocabulary in this paragraph. Now you can see here that we've used some nice comparative adjectives. We've got the word safer and more pleasant. So it's just describing things quite well here. We've got to remember that this is a task that's asking you to describe things, so using adjectives effectively is a really good thing to do. And also we've got some more idiomatic vocabulary. I'm sure this would have a positive knock-on effect. So a positive knock-on effect, which here it means that by doing something, it will affect something else in a good way. A knock-on effect. So we're using knock-on there as an adjective to describe the effect. Another useful phrase that is often used by native speakers. So there we go. I mean, that's the whole response there. And I've shown you a bit of the key vocabulary and phrases that we've used to achieve a nice high score. But really, you can see in this response, we've fully covered all 4 of the cues, which you don't have to do, but it's a good idea if you at least attempt to do this when you give your answer in part 2 of the IELTS speaking test. You can see that the response was fluent and there were no grammatical errors. We're using the grammar effectively here to explain our idea. There we have it. Hopefully that can help you with your own responses. You could think about how you would respond to this task card and maybe practice it yourself and use some of the ideas and vocabulary that I have in my answer to help you with yours. There we go. Like I said, I hope it was useful for you, and if you don't want to miss out on future videos on similar topics, then remember to subscribe to the channel, and if it was useful, then remember to click the like button. There we have it. Thanks for watching, and see you again in the next video.